Okay, so how are you doing, everyone? Good. We'll not take too much time of you today before the coffee break, so let's go what we're going to be talking about. Let me quickly introduce myself. So I'm Mikhail. I'm currently working at Zalando, and I've been working in front-end development for about a decade, and I started using Vue about when it was version 2. And yeah, here's my Twitter and LinkedIn, so subscribe and send me messages afterwards if you like. Yeah, so who of you know that today is actually a World Bicycle Day? Probably only me. Okay, so so that's why I twisted a bit the demo to be about cycling. And also, since I work for Zalando, it will be also about e-commerce. So who uses Zalando? Yeah, I guess much more. So yeah, so it will be basically a shopping cart with some bicycle stuff in it, like a great diamond bike and a helmet, because you should drive safely. And we will be able to basically calculate the amount in the cart and remove products from there and stuff like this, and see how that can be done with a state manager called pinia. That's why my talk is actually quite related to what was the previous one. So I hope the ones of you who haven't paid in detail attention to the pinia part will have another chance now, and you will later go and check it, pinia, for your project. So just a quick recap. I mean, we all know what are the needs for state in the front end, and I'm not going to bother you with like what we're using it for and why it's important to keep it, yeah, how we can test it and how we can extract it from the components. And there are different tools and solutions for this, depending, again, like the previous speaker said, depending on the size of your application, depending on the framework, depending on the, yeah, how different parts of business functionality interact within the logic. So yeah, that's, I mean, I would say in a Vue ecosystem, we're pretty covered with Vuex for years already, right? So for those who haven't used it for a while, just a quick recap. We have a create store that creates a new store object, state object that may contain default values. It has getters to have like kind of a selection of a specific part of the store, and it has two ways to change your store, like actions and mutations, and you can also extend it with plugins, so that's pretty stable and well-known ecosystem. However, yeah, in a modern version 3 Vue, we have Vuex version 4, where we can use it also in the setup function using kind of similar approach like we did in Vue 2 with computed properties. Now we have it in a computed properties as well within the setup function, or we can extract it to a custom hooks. So it really depends on the complexity of what you're using. It's like, I mean, with a store like this where you have just a couple of properties that you might not need too much, but I mean, as long as the app becomes more complex, you may want to create like modules in your Vuex and create custom hooks to basically store and manage the data. So that's again evolves together with the complexity of your application. Yeah, as long as the application grows and the amount of developers working on it is growing, you may at some point think like how we could make things more modular, more independent from each other. That's basically applies on multiple levels, right? We try to break our code bases to like from a monolithic to maybe like a microservice-ish based approach, right? Or micro front ends. And the same goes inside of one application. You may want to also kind of separate your store and state management into separate pieces. Vuex has modules for this, so you can modularize your store. But besides that, if you look at the industry, there are other solutions that kind of try to go from that approach, like a small separate stores per business function or per type of data you're storing there. So for example, we have MobX, that is also a kind of philosophy, is about to have separate stores that cover a specific part of your data. The same goes for example, stores in Svelte. I don't know if somebody experimented with Svelte, it also goes for like separate stores that manage that store data and change data for specific part of your application, and then you can kind of reuse and combine them to create a derived state. So that's also, you can see similar thing with the custom hooks in Vue. That's something that previous speaker also was showing, right? When you kind of extract your state management for one component or for multiple into a separate store, and then use it in a specific component where you need it. So I mean, that's a lot of examples, and I think Pinia takes it further and makes it even more, let's say, straightforward, how you can use simple composable stores to work with data. So let's quickly look what Pinia is. It's really tiny. I think it's a bit more than 1 kilobyte of minified code. It goes with the philosophy of separate stores, as I said before. We will see it in the example later. And it still allows you to combine certain parts of your data. And besides that, it has excellent DevTools support. You already saw that, right? So it also has like hot model replacement and server-side rendering if you're using that. So that's, I would say, the good starting point to really try to use it in your real-life project. I'm currently using it in one project, but like together with Vuex, just to see how compatible it is, and it was pretty good journey for now. But let's now switch from the theory part, let's say, to the practical side. So how does the Pinia store look like? Here's the simple example. You use a define store method that will create a store with certain name for you, and you set the initial value of it using a state property. So here we have, of course, the most simple thing you can have on the slide is the counter, and the default value of the counter is 0. And what you're going to do with the counter, you increment it, and here is the special action for this, that you can mutate the store. And as you can see, we're using like a this here to reference specific items in your store. So that's very simple example. We will improve it on it later. So just for the start. And then this created a user counter store. You can import it in your components, in your setup function, and read and write it. And you can also use it in other stores to create some combined values out of it. So that's it. Let's go to the code demo. So I'll start with a simple version of the app that just does the I think it should be like that. Yeah, so this is the Vuex version, and currently we have a shopping cart with the same two things, right? The bike and the helmet, and we can automatically recalculate the amount of values. You can remove items, you can add items. That all happens inside of the Vuex store, and if we look at this one, it will be something like that. So we have, zoom in a bit. So if we look at the Vuex side, it is the way you would expect it, just a default state, a getter to recalculate the values, and some mutations to change the composition of your, to change the data that you have in your store, right? So that's the entry point. That's how you would do it in Vuex. And then in a component, you can just create a new version of a store using use store hook that Vuex provides, and then create a separate computed values that will be looking at the specific parts of the store. Like here we're using getters to get the cart total calculation, and here we're using like a products computer property which will just return all the products. And then you can return from the setup and use it in your component. So that's, I think, pretty straightforward setup. Now I'll recreate the same one in Pinia in a separate repo. Let's stop this one for now. Here. So it's all the same mostly. I'll just start this. We're starting with the same UI, but it is not hooked to anything, so that it will not work out of the box. What we're going to do, we're going to first look at the structure we have. I have component, the product item component here, which is just iteration of the hard-coded products item. So there's no state attached or something. Let's then start doing that. And for that, I will switch back to this. So basically, we use. I'll just copy some parts so it goes faster. So I'm creating a use cart store that would be called a cart, and then inside I'm putting, instead of empty cart, I can already inject some of the products, so it can be displayed. I'll leave the actions for later. And then it's already good to go, so we can display the products from the state. I'm going to go to cart page and what's the name of it? And then in the setup function, I can take this one, and then I can replace the old hard-coded products with cart dot. And then I need to pick the name. It is inside of a cart property, so I will do a cart. Let's do it as store.cart. Okay. Missing something. Oh, shit. And it's by name, not a default export. Yeah, okay, so we have the items that come now from the store. Again, there's nothing yet happening. We need to at least implement the removal functionality and then do some subtotal and all that part. So for this, again, I'll just reuse the parts that we have in Vuex, if I find it. Yeah. So in our Vuex store, I already have the, what's here? I already have a getter that I can use. Here we use, it's a Vuex getter that I can still just paste here. But the only thing I need to adjust for is that it's, in case of pinia, we're using this. And I think that's mostly the difference. Oh, so here, like this. And we're not injecting anything here. And then if I want to use the cart total as a getter, I don't need to namespace it like store.getters.cart total. I can just go directly with it and put like, let's return the whole thing. And then here I can do and I need to, since I'm not going to use this, I'll just put this. Okay, let's see what we have. So now we have cart total working, and if I, let's say, want 2 helmets, and it will increase the value. But the removal still doesn't work, so we will need to adjust for this. Let's see, what goes next is the again, removal functionality is something I can just directly take from UX version. It's just filtering an item by ID, so I can just make sure I'm using the same here. And this will be in the actions, since Pinia does not have special actions, sorry, it doesn't have mutations. You do all the changes in your actions, so here will be a removal functionality. And again, not to forget that we're using this instead of state, and then the first argument is gone, and then you can do it like this. And then, again, we can hook this action to your removal button. Since I was preparing it, I have like a remove event in my product item that I'm gonna just consume here. And again, since I'm exporting returning the store from the setup, I can just do it like this, right? So it reminds me a bit like in Vue version 2, you have the initial data property, initial data function, and the properties and the methods, and then you just call them directly in your template without specifically pointing, is it a property or is it a internal component state, or it's a method, right? And it's the same kind of for pinia. You just you don't need to put like actions or getters. You just have those names, and they're directly available on the store object that you create in your setup function in the component. So I've just added the remove from cart. It will hopefully work the same way, and yeah. Now I have removal functionality, and I mean now we can continue further with adding more getters. For example, if we want to do some calculation of delivery or a text in addition to the main costs, we can just do it here. Let's have a text of 1.1%. Then here I can do this dot so I've added the getter for specifically calculating the delivery, the amount of money you'll have to pay, including tax. Then we can again add it here as an extra element. It will be called sum with tax. Yep. Oh, it's an N. Interesting. Give me a moment. So in pinia, you should be able to use same way, but is it cart total? Yes, yeah, directly. That's correct. Oh. Yeah, because it's not taking the actual state value, but I'm calling a getter, right? Now, yes, we don't look at this typical JavaScript thingy. We can always get rid of it later, but now we have a value in the cart plus a text, and it's also a getter that we can consume from the pinia store. So that's just a quick overview how you can do it with pinia. So if we look at it again, we can create separate stores per let's say business object. In our case, it's items in the cart, and default value can be either a static object, or it can be an array, whatever, or it can be a method that returns a new value. We don't have mutations; we only have actions when using pinia, and yeah, getters is the same way to extract certain parts of the data of your specific store. As I mentioned earlier, you can have the same plugin extension system like in Vuex. That's maybe for a separate conversation. And yeah, plugins are the same powerful as you can as you would expect in Vuex. You can watch the store changes and react on it accordingly. What is also nice is that in Pinia you have extra items like store.patch when you're doing state.patch when you need to update like a lot of items in your store, and store.reset when you need to get back to the original default starting values. That could be a nice addition in case if you, for example, want to empty the cart or I don't know, log off the user and things like this. So there's a built-in thingy that goes together with Pinia. So that's it for the demo. Let's go back to the summary real quick. So just to quickly compare, as it states in the docs, Pinia tries to be as close to Vuex philosophy as possible, but also it tries to eliminate some of the concepts that may not be needed for certain size of the projects. Again, it's really, really tiny, so you can still throw it into the project that already using Vuex and not think about, let's say, consequences for your bundle size. It is modular out of the box, so it kind of pushes you to separate concerns and work with separate parts of your data differently. However, if you will need some composed values from different parts of the store reactively, Pinia can do that for you. So again, that's maybe not, I would not say it's like a first choice for a project, because still Vuex has a much larger ecosystem and much more learning resources, especially if you have mid-er or junior developers. So Vuex is a safe choice for any kind of project, but I would say Pinia really deserves to try and work with it and add it to your existing project. That should be not inobtrusive and will give you some flexibility later when you will want to refactor, for example, your large-scale project into maybe several smaller ones. Then the store will be already ready for that. So consider this. Yeah, that's it for me. Thanks. I'll be happy to answer questions in the Twitter, and also here's the link for the slides. Try use Pinia.